Here we have an equation with fractions. What do you do? Get rid of fractions, or get rid of the denominators, right? You do it by multiplying the denominator. And you have to multiply, whatever you multiply, the same thing has to be multiplied to all the terms. We have 3 terms. Each of them would be multiplied by 2x. So that 2x will cancel away, this x and this x will cancel away, and no more fractions. Great. You just have 5 plus 2 times 2 equals to 2 times 6, which is 12x. And then since 2 times 2 is 4, and then 4 plus 5 is 9. So you have 9 equals to 12x. And then you divide by 12, that's the answer. Oh, but there's a common factor between 9 and 12. What's that? 3. You can divide top and bottom by 3. What do you get? 3 over 4. That's the final answer. Now, when it comes to equations that have fractions, and if it has x in the denominator, you always have to go back and check if that's an answer. However, as long as this answer is not going to make any of the denominators 0, it will be a solution. Okay, so you don't have to fully check. You just have to look at this and see if the answer will make any of the denominators 0. If it does, then your answer that answer should be nullified. Okay, but right now 3 over 4 does not make any of these denominators 0, so that's fine. Okay, so for this one, what should I multiply to get rid of the denominators? First, 2 has to be multiplied in order to kill this one. But to kill this one, what do you have to multiply? X minus 2. So we have to multiply by both. So we're going to multiply by 2 and x minus 2 to all of the terms. So this is the first term, and then there's another term, 3x over x minus 2, and then 2x minus 2 times x. All right, now we cancel the things that are common. 2 is on top, 2 is on the bottom. They're going to cancel. X minus 2 is in the numerator. X minus 2 is in the denominator, so those cancel. Again, no fractions, right? We just have x minus 2 times 2x plus 5 minus 2 times 3x equals to, it's easier if you have x brought in front, so let me just rewrite it in this way. Multiplication can be done in any order, right? So we're going to switch the places between x minus 2 and x. So that's what we'll write. Now we have to expand this. To expand, you have to do first, outer, inner, last. FOIL. So x times 2x is 2x squared. X times 5 is 5x. Negative 2 times 2x is negative 4x. Negative 2 times 5 is negative 10. 2 times 3 is 6, so it's negative 6x. 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times negative 2 is negative 4x. Okay, so normally you will need to combine like terms, and subtract. But for some reason, I don't know if this was purposeful. I'm not so sure if I just made up this question or I just copied it from somewhere, but I see that 2x squared is cancels, right? And then negative 4x cancels. So you can cancel those terms both sides. So first by subtracting 2x squared both sides, it's going to get rid of this. And adding 4x both sides, it's going to get rid of this. And after doing that, the survivors are 5x minus 10 minus 6x equals to 0. Now I still see like terms, 5x and 6x, those are like terms. What's 5 minus 6? negative 1. So you have negative 10 minus x equal to 0. And then if you move the minus x to the other side by adding x both sides, you get negative 10 equals to x. And once again, negative 10 does not make this 0 or any other denominator, so that's perfectly fine. So that's a solution. So for this question, same idea. To get rid of x minus 2, I have to multiply by x minus 2. To get rid of x, I have to multiply by x. However, if you, again, look at this x squared minus 2x and multiply by x squared minus 2x, this becomes too much. Like, multiplying this everywhere is going to create polynomials of very high degree. So you probably don't want that. And that makes you hesitate a little bit. So do I really need to multiply everything? But if you have been doing a lot of algebra problems, then when you see x squared minus 2x, you should have an urge to factor. Yeah. Just like you have urge for an ice cream or something, you would have urge to factor when you see x squared minus 2x, because they both have the common factor of x, right? So you can factor the x out. If you factor the x out, what's left? X times what is x squared? X times x, right? And then x times what is negative 2x? Negative 2. So that's how it factors. And if you factor it like this, then you realize, oh, this is same as this, what I was planning to multiply out anyways. So that means if I multiply this to every term, then even this denominator will get killed because you're multiplying the same thing. This and this, this denominator and this what we're multiplying are exactly the same. So that's going to do it. Okay, so let's now go through with the plan. We're going to multiply x times x minus 2 to every term that you see in the equation. So that you see x minus 2 canceling, x and x canceling, and the entire thing cancels with this entire thing. Okay, so what's left? X times 2x plus 1, those are not canceled, so they still stay. X minus 2 times 3, that's not canceled, so that stays. And then these two cancel, so you just have negative 6. Okay, let's continue. X times 2x is 2x squared. X times 1 is x. X times 3 is 3x. Negative 2 times 3 is negative 6, equals to negative 6. Okay, let's further simplify. How should we simplify this? I can cancel the negative 6 and negative 6, right? By adding 6 both sides. This just becomes 0, right? And also, x plus 3x, what's that? What's x plus 3x? 4x. So you end up with 2x squared plus 4x equal to 0. Oh, I see this. I again have the urge to factor. Why? I see a 2 and 4. What's the common factor? 2. X squared and x, common factor. So therefore, what can you factor out? 2x. You can factor the 2x out. And 2x times x is 2x squared. 2x times 2 is 4x. So this is what you get, right? And then you can say 2x equals to 0, which means x is 0. X plus 2 is 0, which means x is negative 2. So we have two solutions. Are they both solutions? Why not? Yes? If you plug in 0, you see right now that right here it causes a problem. When you plug in 0, this becomes 3 divided by 0, which is illegal. So that's no good. On the other hand, negative 2 is fine because negative 2 minus 2 is negative 4. Negative 2 is fine. Negative 2 squared is positive 4. Negative 2 times negative 2 is, again, positive 4. So you get 8 in the denominator. So none of these will have 0 if you plug in negative 2, which means x equals to negative 2 is a valid solution, right? Okay. This next one is a bit different now. It has a square root. When you have an equation with square root, you have to get rid of the square root by doing what? Squaring it, yes. So we have to square this one, but you can't just square both sides because you can't square term by term. That's not allowed. The only way you can square this is if this is isolated on one side. So what we're going to do is we're going to add square root of 2x plus 3 both sides so that x is equal to square root of 2x plus 3, which now has the square root isolated. When square root is isolated, then you're allowed to square both sides. X squared is x squared. Square of the square root is gone, and you just have 2x plus 3. Subtract 2x minus 3 equal to 0. Can you factor this? It would be x minus 3 times x plus 1 equal to 0. And therefore you have either x minus 3 equal to 0, which says x is 3, x plus 1 equals to 0, which says x equals to negative 1. Okay? So you have two solutions. Oh, but it's a square root equation. So you have to do something. What is that next something? You have to check, right? So let's do a check. If x is 3, and you plug it into the original one, you get 3 minus square root of 2 times 3 plus 3. I'm just plugging in 3 into both of the x's, okay, which gives you 3 minus square root of 2 times 3 is 6. 6 plus 3 is 9. And you get 3 minus 3, which is 0. Is that good? Is that good or bad? It's good because the right side is indeed equal to 0. So this is indeed equal to 0, so it's a check. This checks out. On the other hand, if you do x equals to negative 1, then you get negative 1 minus square root of 2 times negative 1 plus 3. As you can see, if I replace this x and this x by negative 1, that's what I get. If I compute further, negative 2 plus 3, what's that? It's negative 2 and then plus 3, what's that? Positive 1. And what's square root of 1? So you get negative 1 minus 1, what's that? Negative 2. Is that good or bad? It's bad because it's not equal to the right side, which is 0. So this is not a solution. Therefore, this one turned out to be not a solution, so this is the only answer. Okay, for some reason I skipped from A, B, C, D to suddenly G. I think it happened because I was copying off from something and I didn't like the questions in between, so I skipped those and moved on to G. So you have a fractional power equation. In such a case, there are two ideas involved. One is that you have to exponentiate by the reciprocal number. You have 3 over 2, you want to exponentiate it by 2/3. Second idea is that you want to express any numbers that you see as exponents. So 125 is what to what power? What is it? 5 to the third, right? So you want to first write down the number you're given as 5 to the third. Okay? And then you want to exponentiate both sides by the reciprocal power of what you see in front of, on the top of x. So we're going to exponentiate both sides by 2/3. Now, we know that if you have an exponent outside and inside like this, those two multiply, right? But if you multiply any number to its reciprocal, it's just 1. And power of 1 doesn't do anything. So you just get x on the left side. On the other side, again, we multiply, so it's 3 times 2/3. And here we see that 3 and 3 cancels, so that x is equal to 5 squared. What's that? 25. So that's the answer. Let's try this one. You have x minus 3, 2/5. And then, what about this? 4 should be 2 squared. Okay. And then, now you exponentiate both sides as 5 over 2 power. So that these two multiply to give you 1, canceling the 2/5 power completely. On the right side, you have 2, so 2 times 5 over 2. The 2's cancel, and you get x minus 3 equals to 2 to the 5th power. And what's 2 to the 5th power? 32. So you add 3 both sides, and you get 32 plus 3, which is x equals to 35. That's the answer. Here we have 2 questions where you have to use substitution to solve. And if you look at the questions themselves, you can kind of see right away that you would need to do something unusual, right? Because did we ever learn how to solve equation with x to the 4th power? Never, we haven't, okay? So we need to do some kind of a change of variables here. And the hint here is that if you have x squared, what do you get if you square x squared? What's the square of x squared? X to the 4th, right? So if you take this and you square it, you get x to the 4th. That's a hint, okay? That indicates that if you set t equals to x to the squared, then x to the 4th will be same as x squared, which is t squared. Very good. Okay. So that allows us to replace x to the 4th as t squared, and then x squared should be replaced as t. You have this. And then this factors as t plus 5 times t minus 3 equal to 0. There are other ways to solve this, by the way. It's just a quadratic equation, right? So you can use quadratic formula to solve it, or if you like, you can use the completing the square to solve it. Yeah, it just happens to be, if it's factorizable, then the easiest way to solve this would be just to factor it. How do you factor such a thing? Just look for 2 numbers that multiply to negative 15 and add to number 2. And positive 5 and negative 3 will do it. 5 times negative 3 is negative 15. 5 plus negative 3 is 2. So that's okay. So this is how the above factors. If you are not so sure during the exam, sometimes you write something and you're not so sure if it's correct. You can always check by foiling this out to see that it does match the previous one, okay? So once you do that, then you say t plus 5 equals to 0, which means t is equal to negative 5. T minus 3 equals to 0, which means t equals to positive 3. All right. So are we done? Why aren't we done? Because the original question is about x, and we found the values for t, which means that we don't know what x is yet. So therefore, since t is x squared, this t has to be replaced by x squared. And you have to proceed further. Okay? If x squared is -5, then x is plus minus square root of -5. Is this okay? No, why not? Because you can't square a negative. That's not allowed. So that won't be a solution. By the way, it kind of depends in the class. So if you're doing high school algebra, some of you might be taught that this means its solution is plus minus square root of 5i. But in this pre-calculus class, we don't deal with complex numbers. All the functions that we deal with are a priori complex, real valued. It takes real valued input and real valued output. So those are not considered in this class. That's why in this class, at least, when you see a minus inside the square root, we say that's not a solution, right? Although some algebra classes might consider that as a solution, right? Okay, but then here x squared is 3, then x is plus minus square root of 3. Is this okay? Yes, that's okay. So that's a solution. The answer to this question is x is either plus 3 or plus square root of 3 or minus square root of 3. Okay, now let's move on to the next example. This looks more complicated. It's scarier. But you still see that structure. If you take this thing and square it, what would you get? If you take x plus 5 to the 1/3 power and you square this, what would you get? What's the rule for exponents here and there? Yeah, you get 2/3, right? Because it's 1/3 times 2. Exponents, these two exponents multiply, right? And when you multiply a number by itself is considered as the numerator because 2 is 2 over 1. 2 really is the numerator. You have to have that understanding. 2 is the numerator, 3 is the denominator. Numerator times numerator and denominator times denominator, you get 2 over 3. Okay, therefore this would be x plus 5 to the 2/3 power, which is exactly this one. Right? So if you square this, you get that. That suggests that you should be taking this one as t. So if you set t as x plus 5 to the 1/3 power, then t squared is going to be this next one, x plus 5 to the 2/3 power. And that's great because now you can say t squared plus t minus 20 is equal to 0. And that equation is a lot easier to solve than the original one because this one, again, let's look for two numbers that multiply to -20 and add to +1. What are those two numbers? Give me those two numbers. Two numbers that multiply to -20 adds up to 1. Yeah? 5 and -4. So it's t plus 5, t minus 4 equal to 0. That gives you either t plus 5 is 0, which means t is -5, or t minus 4 is 0, which gives you t equals to 4. Okay. So now what? Well, again, we're not done yet. You have to keep reminding yourself. See, the upside of substitution is that it makes hard-looking equations look simpler. The downside is a lot of times people forget that answer for t is not the answer. You have to go back for the x. So we really have, since t is x plus 5 to the 1/3 power, we really have x plus 5 to the 1/3 power equals to -5, and also x plus 5 to the 1/3 power equals to +4. Okay, let's solve these separately. This one, how should we go about solving this one? You have to exponentiate both sides by its reciprocal, right? So the reciprocal is 3. 1/3, if you flip it upside down, that's 3, right? So we're going to take the third power both sides, which will cancel this one away so that you get x plus 5 equals to negative 5 to the third power. What's that? Negative 125. Now subtract 5 both sides, and you get x equals to negative 130. All right. Next, if I have x plus 5 to the 1/3 power equals to 4, you take, again, third power both sides so that this 1/3 and 3 will cancel away, leaving you with x plus 5. Now what is 4 to the third power? 4 times 4 is 16. 16 times 4 is 64. And then you subtract 5 both sides, and you get x equals to 59. So you get these two answers. Find the equation of line passing negative 2, 4 and 1, 2 in point slope form. What is the point slope form? Y minus y1 equals to m times x minus x1. So make sure that you're using this at some point. Now the point slope form suggests that you need to know the slope and a point. And these points, x1, y1 could be either this one or that one. Usually you just use the one that's given first. But it's not wrong to use this one as x1 and y1. Okay? So x1 is negative 2, y1 is 4. So those are okay. X is x and y is y. You never plug in anything to x and y, okay? When you're finding line equations, that's not needed. You just have to figure out what x1 is, when y1 is, and then you need the slope. Okay. So that means you have to find the slope. How do you find the slope? Slope is change of y over change of x. What is the change of y? It's always terminal minus initial, right? So the terminal value of y is 2. Initial value of y is 4. So 2 minus 4 is what you get. And then 1 minus negative 2 is the terminal minus initial for x values. 2 minus 4 is negative 2. 1 minus negative 2 is positive 3. So that gives you negative 2/3 as your slope, and therefore we're almost done. Y minus y1 is 4. Negative 2/3 is your m. X minus x1 is negative 2. So that's the answer. And because it's asking for point slope form, you can just stop here. Okay, let's move into the second question. You want to find an equation of the line which is parallel to another given line. So how do you solve that? Well, we know that parallel means same slope, right? Parallel means same slope. And therefore, you want to find the slope of the given line. So you have negative 2x plus 3y equals to 6. You want to find the slope of this. How do you find the slope of a given line? You have to solve for y, right? So you have to move the 2x to the other side, and you get 3y equals to 2x plus 6. Divide both sides by 3. So y is 2x divided by 3 and 6 divided by 3. And 2x divided by 3 is same thing as 2 over 3 times x. Did you know this? Is that okay? I realize that some people are confused with this. So let me stop here for a minute and talk about fractions. Okay, here's a question. 9 plus 6 over 3 is 9 over 3 plus 6 over 3. True or false? Is this right or wrong?
Yeah, because you cancel the denominator.
9 plus 6 is? 15. 15 divided by 3 is 5. Okay. 9 over 3 is 3. 6 over 3 is 2. 3 plus 2 is 5. That's correct, right? Okay. Let's see if this is okay. 9 times 6 over 3 is 9 over 3 times 6 over 3. Yes or no? Yes or no? How many of you say yes? Okay, so everyone says no, right? It's no. Because 9 times 6 is 54, and you divide by 3, that's 18. 9 over 3 is 3. 6 over 3 is 2. And 6 is not equal to 18. So that's wrong. And although that's wrong, it's like a common myth that many students seem to be thinking that, oh, you have to divide both of them. But that's only true when it's addition or subtraction, okay? When it's a multiplication, you only divide one of them. You get me? So 9 times 6 over 3 is the same thing as 9 over 3 times 6, or 9 times 6 over 3. It's either one of the two. You can't divide both. This is very important, okay? So if you have 2 times x divided by 3, you can just rewrite this as 2 over 3 times x. You can also write it as 2 times x over 3, but that doesn't help us because only when you write it like this, you can read off the slope as the coefficient. All right? So let's rewrite this right side by making use of what we just observed, that 2x over 3 can be written as 2 over 3 times x plus 2. 6 over 3 is 2. And we can say that this is the slope. So that means this equation has slope of 2/3. What does that mean for the new line that we're trying to build? What kind of line are we trying to build? I want a line that's parallel to this one, and that it passes through 6, -4. Now, parallel to this one means that the line that we are trying to build should have the same slope. So 2/3 will be our slope. Okay, so 2/3 is going to be our slope, m equals to 2/3. And then we'll again resort to the point slope form. Okay, so we'll just use the point slope form. Y minus -4 equals to 2/3 x minus 6. Okay. Again, we're using this one as x1 and y1 as -4. So I plugged everything to the point slope form. But we don't stop here because the question says find it in slope intercept form. That means we have to solve this for y. All right. So let's multiply this out. Y plus 4 is what you get here. And then 2/3 times x is just 2/3 times x. Minus 2/3 times 6. What's 6 times 2? 12 divided by 3. That's 4, right? So you have y plus 4 equals to 2/3 x minus 4. And then you subtract 4 both sides. And you get y equals to 2/3 x minus 8 as the answer for part B. Okay, how do you find x and y intercepts? To get x-intercepts, what do you do? Plug in 0 to what? You set y as 0. So if you put y as 0, you get -2x plus 3 times 0 equals to 15, which means -2x is equal to 15. And now you divide both sides by -2, which gives you x as -15 over 2. Or -7.5, okay? What about the y-intercept? You set x equals to 0, so you have -2 times 0 plus 3 times y equals to 15. Now you divide both, since this is just 3y equals to 15, now you divide by 3 both sides and you get y as 5. Okay, so that will allow us to draw the graph easily. -15 over 2, it's -7.5, so here's -15 over 2. Let's just say this. And because 5 will be shorter than negative 7.5, let's just say 5 is about here. So this will be 5. And then you just need to draw a line that passes through both points. If you're given 2 points, that determines the line, right? So the line equation will be describing the line passing through these 2 points. So that's the graph. For the second question, the key word is perpendicular. So we need the fact before moving on to solve this. So what is the fact about perpendicular slope? So the perpendicular slope is what? Yeah, very good. So you have to flip the fraction upside down, and you have to put a minus in front. Okay, that's what's needed. All right, so that means we first have to figure out what's the slope of this guy. So let's solve this first. Solution, x minus 2y equals to 12. Move the x to the other side, so negative 2y equals to minus x plus 12. And then you divide everything by negative 2. And then, as before, you rewrite, well, negative divided by negative is positive, right? So you have x over 2, and then 12 divided by negative 2, it would be negative 6. And you think of this as 1 times x over 2, and then instead of 2 dividing the entire thing, you just let 2 divide one of them. Okay, so this is 1/2 times x minus 6. That's how the fraction works when you have a product, okay? When you divide a product by a number, you can let it divide just one of them, not both. You can't do it for both, you just divide one of them. Okay, so if you do that, what's the slope? 1/2, right? So we know that the slope of this line, this right here, has a slope of 1/2. Then what's the slope of the line that we're trying to construct? Yes, first you take 2, flip it upside, take the 1/2 and you flip it upside down, which is 2 over 1, and you put a minus. So you have 1/2, you flip it upside down, reciprocal, so it's 2 over 1, and you put a minus, which is just negative 2. That's going to be our slope. Okay, yeah. 1 over 2, flip it upside down, put a minus. Okay, and again, you just use the point slope form. This will be your favorite formula for lines. Whenever you have lines, like 60, 70% of the time, you'll be using this one. You have a question? Yes.
Can you explain the last part of the
Why 1 times x over 2 is 1/2 x? That's the question? Okay, so it's like, it's what I said, like 6 times 3 over, 9 times 6 over 3. I was talking about this before, right? So is this same as 9 over 3 times 6 over 3? Yes or no? No, it's not. It's wrong. This is very wrong, okay? Is it same as 9 over 3 times 6? Yes. You only divide one of them, and it's the same thing, okay? You can see that this is 18, and this is also 18. Okay? You can also say 9 times 6 over 3. So either one is okay, but you can't divide both. That's very wrong, okay? So what I have over here, I'm thinking of negative x over negative 2 as positive x over positive 2 because negatives cancel. And then I'm thinking of x as 1 times x. And then you just let the 2 divide only the 1. That's 1/2 times x, right? So you have 1/2 as the coefficient. Yeah. That's the slope. 1/2 is the slope. So I got this negative 2 by taking the reciprocal and putting a minus. Okay. All right, so now since we're given x1 and y1 here, we just have to plug everything into the point slope form. Y minus negative 2 equals to negative 2, that's our slope, times x minus 1. And it says to write the answer in point slope form, no, the slope intercept form, so we have to solve for y. Y plus 2 is negative 2x plus 2. Oh, then we can subtract 2 both sides and get y equals to negative 2x as our answer. 4 lines here. And they'll have slopes. And the question is, which one has the slope of the least value? Now you get the slope by calculating rise over run, right? So you do, let's start with A. The way you do rise over run is you pick 2 points on the line and think about what should be the rise and run to reach the next line, next point. So you start from here, you first have to go down. So it's negative 1 as the rise, and you have to go 1, 2 steps. So 2 is the run. What's the slope then? Negative 1/2, right? Rise over run. Rise is negative 1, run is 2. How about this one? From here to there, you have to go down by 2 and run by 1. So what's the slope? Negative 2 over 1. How about this one? If you go from here to there, you have to go up by 2 and run by 1. 2 over 1, which is 2. Or 2 over 1. Okay. And then for this one, to go from here to there, you have to go up by 1 and run by 2. So rise over 1, what's that? 1 over 2. Okay, so we computed all the slopes. Among these numbers, what's the least? Yeah? Negative 2. Yeah, it's B. The answer is B because negative 2 is lesser than negative 1/2, right? Yeah. So the answer is B. Okay, here's a similar kind of question. You're given a line and you have to find out its slope. And again, you just have to figure out what's the rise over run going from this one of the points to another point on the line. So here, to go from 1 to negative 2, you have to go down by 3. So rise is negative 3. And then to run to 0 to 2, you get positive 2. What's the slope? Negative 3 over 2. So these are simple questions. If the line y equals to 8 times x minus 2 passes 0.5 comma 2, what is the slope of the line? Well, you're given a point on a graph. How do you know if a point is on the graph or not? Huh? Yeah, you plug it in. If you plug in the x as 5 and 2 as y, and if it satisfies the equation, that means this is a point on the graph. If it doesn't satisfy the equation, then it's not a point on the graph. But since it says it satisfies the equation, it passes, so it means satisfies. So we just plug it in and set it equal, and that's going to tell us what the a value would be, right? So let's do that. 5 goes into x, 2 goes into y. So 2 equals to a times 5 minus 2. And then 2 is equal to 5 minus 2 is 3. So a is equals to 2 divided by 3 if you divide both sides by 3. And therefore, a is 2/3, which means the slope of this line is 2/3, right? If you multiply this out, y equals to 2/3 times x minus 2. That gives you y equals to 2/3 x minus 4/3. So slope is 2/3 and y-intercept is negative 4/3. Okay? So that's the answer. B, if the line y equals to 3x plus b passes negative 1 comma negative 9, find the x and y intercepts. Same idea, you plug in negative 1 into x, negative 9 into y, and you get negative 9 equals to 3 times negative 1 plus b. You add 3 both sides, and you get negative 6 equals to b. That means the equation is 3x minus 6. Okay. What's the y-intercept? Negative 6. right? If you plug in 0 to x, you get negative 6. So y-intercept would be negative 6. What's the x-intercept? Well, to get the x-intercept, you set y as 0. So 0 equals to 3x minus 6. Add 6 both sides. Divide by 3. What do you get? X equals 2. 2. I didn't write on here, but the question says use quadratic formula to solve this, and you have to simplify your answer. Okay. Hopefully everyone here remembers the quadratic formula. X equals to negative b plus or minus square root b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. Very good. Now, however, this can only be applied if your equation is in the form of something x squared plus something x plus something equals to 0. And this is not in that form, which means you must move these terms to the left. So negative x squared, if you move to the other side, it becomes positive x squared plus 5x, and you subtract 7 both sides, you get this. So that means A is 1, B is 5, C is negative 7. So now let's plug everything in. Negative 5 plus minus square root of 5 squared minus 4 times 1 times negative 7 over 2 times 1. That gives you negative 5 plus minus square root of 25. Minus minus is plus. 7 times 4 is 28 over 2. And then you get negative 5 plus minus square root of 53 over 2. And that's it. If 53 contained the square factor, then you have to move it outside. In this case, 53 doesn't have any square factor. So that's as simple as you can get. Okay? Similar question, you have to move this 2 to the other side. So you get 3x squared minus x minus 2 equals to 0. And you get x as negative of negative 1 plus minus square root negative 1 of squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 2 over 2 times 3. That's going to be 1 plus minus square root of 1. Minus times minus is plus. 4 times 3 times 2 will be 24 over 6. And you get 1 plus minus square root of 25 over 6. What is square root of 25? 5. Therefore, you have to further simplify 1 plus 5 over 6 and 1 minus 5 over 6. So first of all, if you have 1 plus 5 over 6, what's that? That's 6 over 6, and that's equal to 1. If you have 1 minus 5 over 6, this is negative 4 over 6. If you divide top and bottom by 2, you get 2 over 3. Therefore, the answer is x equals to 1 and negative 2/3. That will be the completely simplified answer. Let's move on to this one. X equals to negative 7 plus minus square root. Oh, sorry. Yeah. And then 7 squared minus 4 times 1 times 1 over 2 times 1. This is negative 7 plus minus square root of 49 minus 4. What's that? 45 over 2. Now, if you write this as your answer, you wouldn't be getting full credit. You'll get 1 point off. Why? Why is that? Why don't you get full credit? 45 is 9 times 5, and 9 is a square number. It's a square factor. So 9 comes outside the square root as what? 3. So the correct answer should be 3 times square root of 5 over 2. And now you can't simplify anymore. Similar, x equals to negative of negative 2 plus minus square root negative 2 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 2 over 2 times 3. which is 2 plus minus square root of 4 plus 24 over 6. That's 2 plus minus square root of 28 over 6. Is that where you stop? No, you have to do a bit more, right? What? 28 is 4 times 7. 4 comes out as 2. So 2 plus minus 2 square root of 7 over 6. Is that the answer? Not yet, because 2, 2, 6, they're all divisible by 2, right? So you have to divide by 2, which gives you 1 plus minus square root of 7 over 3. So that's the final answer. Okay, we solved everything in the practice exam.